That's all right.
No, I had problems with the Messenger there on my devices. Well, it logged me out of Messenger, which was not great. And then when I went back in, it said, "Oh, there's a new version you need to update." It doesn't give you the option.
For fuck's sake.
You can do it later. So I updated it, and then you open it, and it says, "Oh, there's a new version of Messenger, which you need to update." And I was like, "Oh, for fuck's sake!" So I went back in, tried it again. Couldn't update it because obviously there's no updates to be had, so I had to delete it and then reinstall it.
Oh, for God's sake. What a start. Mine, for some reason, started asking for a PIN a wee while ago, which I'd never heard of before.
Yeah, you get to restore your chats. You need the PIN. Yeah, aye.
It's really best for government purposes that my chats aren't restored.
Yeah. Well, there's loads of changes obviously been made to Facebook and Meta and all this, like taking away the moderators, or not moderators, the content.
The fact checkers.
Fact checkers, yes. Aye. Yes. They're leaving it up to the community like they do on X. Fuck's sake, man.
Because honestly, we don't need facts. Just opinions will suffice. That'll be fine. We'll all go on with that.
It's the fact that all these companies are running scared now from the Republicans. They're all saying, we're going to remove diversity programs, but we're still going to have them, but they're not going to be called diversity programs anymore. And saying, well, that's not a diversity program, then that's not positive action, if you like.
Yeah.
It's just a case of, they're all running scared.
It will never cease to astonish me how these businesses are so willing to get on their knees, metaphorically, for certain types of government and do... Either I'm like, are you just so scared that you're doing all of this because you think it'll keep you okay for the next 4 years? Or is this who you really are? And now you're getting the chance to show us that, this is what you prefer to do. It's hideous either way.
I think one from column A and one from column B in this instance, Because there was things like companies were criticised over the last couple of years. There's likes of the John Deere company, remember? In the States. They make tractors and various farm implements, and they were saying, right, well, we're going to move all our production down to Mexico. And Trump was saying, we'll see when I get back in power, we're basically going to put you out of business. We're going to make sure that anything that you import is going to cost so much more. And we're going to encourage people to move away from your products and all this sort of stuff. So manipulating the market.
Well, sure. Have they not said that that's kind of why they think Trudeau has gone, partially because he's packed a 25% tariff on Canadian goods, and Trudeau flew down to Mar-a-Lago to have this sort of emergency talk with him, and I think went back with his tail between his legs, and then his finance secretary quit, and then obviously he's gone as well. It does just go to show you that it feels like something brewing, and not in a good way.
Yeah, but the whole tariff thing is you've got companies who are relying on these products. They've got these product lines coming in, stuff that they've been buying for years and years. The tariffs aren't imposed on the company sending it. It's imposed on the company receiving it. It's the US company that pays the tariff.
So they'll stop importing essentially.
But they have to buy it from somewhere. And there's no manufacturing base for the stuff that they're buying in the States, or it's more expensive in the States. So they're either and if sort of a number of similar companies are looking for stuff, then there's not going to be enough of it.
That's true.
So the tariffs are actually getting paid by the US companies, and there was a lot of companies just after Trump announced this proposed tariff on Mexican, European and Canadian goods, that they all said, right, we're just cancelling all our Christmas plans. There's not going to be any bonuses. There's nothing at all because we're going to be hit with these tariffs and we need to pay them. And if we don't, we're going to be in real financial trouble. So, of course, that could be an excuse for not having a Christmas party and stuff like that as well. But they were saying, it was companies stopped hiring and all sorts of things because they just said, we don't know what it's going to be like.
And then presumably that cost is going to be passed on to the consumer. I'm quite certain that the companies aren't going to just fully absorb that. And then given that he's running on a sort of anti-immigration ticket, he's obviously come out and said he's going to allow certain countries in. Is it some sort of visa, HB, something like that?
Yeah.
Obviously there's a shortage of talent. So he's contradicting himself from one sentence to the next.
Yeah, it happens here as well. when
As
they
most
said,
politicians do, I would just like to, for clarity,
yes,
all of them do it.
Yeah, I mean, it happened to you. Remember with Brexit, it said, well, nobody's coming in, we're going to cut off immigration completely. And then they said, oh, wait a minute, see, apart from all the students, so we're going to give the student visas because they pay 3 times over the odds for their university education. And we don't have enough people. We don't have enough doctors and nurses. So, yeah, we'll allow them in, but yeah, we'll limit it as much as possible. So, it's just like, what the actual fuck?
I know. I don't think any of them can remember what they said last week, because it's all. And then the Elon Musk thing has just been a wild journey over the past couple of weeks as well, where I read a headline this morning that said him and Dominic Cummings are cooking up some sort of plan for British politics. I mean, these are things that we just do not need or want. And other than the fact that he is obviously, in inverted commas, the richest man in the world, what are his credentials for getting involved in US and UK politics and sort of interfering?
I know. It's just it's really bizarre that you've got this system, or you've had this system in place where people would work their way up through the ranks politically in order to, and then suddenly it's just, well, no, we've got a guy here with a lot of money, so he's going to be. Because I don't know if that would happen here. I think it would actually, because when governments are getting appointed, you don't necessarily need to be an MP to be sitting in government. You need to be.
Really?
I think you need to be a lord,
right,
in order to sit in like the cabinet. Because remember, David Cameron, when he came back, he had gone,
of course.
so they made him Lord Cameron in order for him to serve in the government. So if it happened here, it'd be Lord Musk.
Christ.
Or whoever the British equivalent of. I don't know. I don't even think there is a British equivalent of Elon Musk here.
One's enough.
Doing their, I mean, the nearest is probably that guy Dyson, and he's
he's not very interested in interfering.
No, well, he even through the whole Brexit thing, supporting it and moved his company basically to Singapore because it was more beneficial to him. But yet maintaining that he was backing Britain and all this sort of stuff. Where you go.
It's always these ones though that say like, "Oh, I'm backing Britain" or "Best of British" or "British business," and then you find out they've got a company in the Cayman Islands or whatever. It's a joke.
Yes, their tax affairs are murky.
I think to say the least. And they're all setting themselves up as like limited companies and all this. And obviously there was the big sort of scandal with so your Gary Barlow and your Jimmy Carr and all that who'd set themselves up as limited companies in order to pay themselves wages. But then they would, I suppose, all of them would argue that tax avoidance, not tax evasion, which obviously that's the slightly more legal version of things.
Yeah, the tax laws in this country are all over the place. It's the sort of thing that's keeping my son in a job, I suppose, because it is so complicated, and they have to find people that can make sure these loopholes work for them, and it's all perfectly legal. But yes, as we saw, there's perfectly legal and there's public perception that these people are just, they are making up their own rules in order to avoid paying vast sums of money, obviously, because they're making vast sums of money.
Yeah,
and if anybody doesn't, there you go.
Lorraine Kelly said that Lorraine Kelly was a persona, not the person. She tried to argue that the persona.
She successfully argued. She didn't
owe the tax.
Yeah, aye. I thought that was crazy because she's, playing the part of yourself. Only when it came to the fact that she get caught out, and she's bounced back from that. She's still on TV. Nobody's ever said to her, "Wait a minute, you're saying that you're a person of the people and you're down there with them and all that, and yet you pull something like this off." But I've seen that a few times, like in comments about her, and it's like the person playing the part of Lorraine. She's introduced as that, which I think is quite funny.
I mean, I don't know why I'm laughing, because it's not funny, because the reason obviously that we don't have enough money for anything really in this country is because people are using these tactics to avoid putting money into the pot. I remember watching an episode of 8 out of 10 Cats, and it was John Richardson, the comedian, who went on a real rant about the lack of funds for the NHS, and he basically said it's because people like you, Jimmy, obviously pointing to Jimmy Carr, he's because you're not putting the money in the pot, and he got a massive round of applause, and Jimmy Carr looked quite flushed and stuff by it, but I thought, no, that's really true. It's all right to make a laugh and joke about it and say, oh, you know, Lorraine Kelly, the person or the persona or whatever, but actually it does have real life consequences, and given that the Labour government have said this week that there's going to be more austerity measures, then...
Yeah. It's like rather than going after the people or changing the rules so that they can't avoid stuff, they go after the people at the bottom end.
Yeah.
They change all the rules around like benefits, make all universal credit, make it really hard to get money in the first place, and then encourage headlines about like dole scroungers and all this sort of stuff, you know.
Yeah. Or immigrants coming on boats. Distract,
and getting a 3-bedroom house in Chiswick or whatever, you know, that kind of thing. Yeah,
yeah, dangle the keys over here so that they're not looking at the real problem. It's like the right in America, you know, they've got their knickers in a twist over drag queens and contraception, and they're not concerned about, you know, young boys going into schools and shooting everybody, which is probably a bigger problem, you know.
Well, yeah, it depends how you look at it. Gun manufacturers wouldn't say so.
That's true, and of course they're all in the pocket of these as well, which I think is quite shocking. And you do just think, like, obviously we don't live in we have had our school tragedy here in Scotland, but straight away the laws were amended so that it wouldn't happen again. I just can't imagine sending a child, you know, if I had a child to school 5 or 6 years old or whatever it is, and they're getting, you know, active shooter drills like that. To me is, do you not see what's wrong with that? But obviously they don't.
Yeah, it seems every country apart from the US, when there's been a tragedy like that, it's been addressed right away and measures have been put in place. Obviously in Scotland there was 2 things that came out of that. One was the change in laws over the ownership of weapons and the licensing of them. It got really restricted down to basically farmers and nobody else, I think it was. And they also brought in the Disclosure Act as well, so that anybody who was working with children or anything like that, they had to go through a far more rigorous process than you know, somebody saying, you know, have you ever interviewed with kids? No? Yep. Well, just stick on your scout uniform and we'll get started, you know.
I know. It does make you wonder why those checks weren't robust in the first place. Just somebody saying, oh, I promise I'm a good person. Like, why was that enough? But obviously society is different, you know.
Haven't looked at a child in months. I'm fine now.
So I shouldn't laugh at these things, but it's that kind of, it's almost like, I know that they call it, like, obviously like doom scrolling when you go online and you just sort of endlessly consume, but it does actually feel like everything is a sort of harbinger of doom at the moment, because every day there's 2 or 3 new headlines where you just think, Jesus Christ, this can't be real life, and then something else will happen and you're like, oh my God, not this, and then